All right, welcome to the Alan and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show. We're joined by a great guest here, and the purpose of this interview is one of our more serious topics. In fact, it's the most serious topic that we've actually had on our show to date. The purpose of this is to save lives. We're definitely doing this interview. If it does help and motivate someone to help them save their life or help them in mental health, it was well worth it. I'm joined here by Pastor Oscar Wilson. He's not only a pastor, but he's also an expert in mental health. He's going to help us today and hopefully help you, more importantly, in giving you a perspective that can help you going forward. So welcome, Oscar, Mr. Pastor Wilson. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing? Thank you for
Great.
having me also.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a special guest today. And, the topic today is, unfortunately, suicide and mental health. Okay. You're an expert in that. So what are some of your personal experiences in suicide?
Well, I'll tell you that it can sneak up on anybody. The one thing that we understand is that mental health itself has been stigmatized for a long time, especially within the African-American community. We look at mental health as something that is not something that we would take on personally or experience personally, but the truth of the matter is that everyone at some point in time has struggled with depression, has struggled with anxiety, has struggled with things that will cause them to be not the norm, or whatever that quote unquote is. But I can just tell you from a personal experience, having lost a loved one, my son, several years back, was violently murdered by someone, and the depression that came from that caused me at one point to have thoughts of suicide, not wanting to face what we were facing as a family. My son was 23 years old at the time and had left. It was around Christmas time, so you've got the holidays, and he had left home, had given me money to go shopping for his mom. He said, "Bye, Dad, I'll see you later." And, we get a phone call at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning telling us that we needed to get to where my son was. And long story short, he had been murdered. That shock, when someone dies and they're sick, you kind of expect that, you kind of, well, they were sick. It's easy to relate to. If someone passes away and it's a car accident or whatever, there's some things that you can use to cope. But when things happen that are already tragic enough, the death is tragic enough, but then also to compile that with murder, to compile that with he was a father, to compile that with, all those other things that go along with him being human. It was devastating for our family. It was devastating for us. And as the man of the house, as the father, the husband, I had to wrap my arms around my family to keep them stable. At the same time, I was neglecting myself and not really focusing on me and my condition. And so I will just say to anyone listening, when you have something traumatic happen, and trauma happens in many different ways to people, but when you have something traumatic as a murder, as a death, even not necessarily traumatic, but a loved one dies that you were not expecting to die, a loved one dies, and it rocks your world. Seek some help. Find somebody to talk to. Find someone that will listen to you. I will say this, you call me an expert. I'm not really an expert. I work in mental health. I'm an administrator of a hospital. I've had and am certified in several mental health courses, first being the first aid of mental health. So I understand crisis stabilization. What we don't sometimes understand is when it's subtle and it sneaks up on people. You see your loved one, and we're going to talk about loved ones and how to help them, but you see your loved one isolating themselves. You see your loved ones not understanding normal things that you would think would be normal. Their mind is going elsewhere. They can't focus. You see your loved one not being able to articulate their thoughts. All of a sudden, it just happens. Could be the loss of a job, could be the loss of a girlfriend, something as simple as that. You just don't know. And so it's so important to be aware of that individual, that loved one, keeping tabs on them. You haven't heard from them in a day or two, call them. You know, especially knowing that they've gone through something traumatic in their life, especially knowing that they've gone through something that may not be very big to you, but it's huge to them. You know, so it's important to keep that line of communication open. Anyway, getting back to my story, it was a random thought. I was driving home from traveling on business. I was driving home, and it was just the spur of the moment. You know, if you turn into that truck, all your worries will be over. You don't have to worry about going home seeing your wife cry. You don't have to worry about consoling everybody else. You don't have to worry about that because it'll be over. That's how subtle and quickly those thoughts can come. And believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many people have had those thoughts before. But because of support, because of prayer, because of consulting with someone, possibly a pastor or a counselor, or even a psychiatrist, they've been able to work through those things. If I had to say anything, if I had to say something that I really want to stick with people, and that is, please, if you are going through something, if you are dealing with something that is just so devastating, that's so traumatic, and you're having these thoughts, you're having, even if they're fleeting thoughts, see somebody, tell somebody, reach out to your primary care physician, reach out to a mental health professional, reach out to somebody, because you'll find by doing that is that it's not as bad as you might think it is, that there is hope, that there are medications that can possibly help you. And I know, again, we talk about medications, people get real, I want to say, uneasy about it. Truth of the matter is that it's no different. Mental health or mental health disorder is no different than having high blood pressure or diabetes, or being any other type of chronic illness. It's something that you can get help with and for, and be better, you know, and be a better you. So, you know, there used to be a time, especially within our community, that, you know, you kept Uncle Willie locked up in the basement, you know, because we knew that he was off. There was something that wasn't right about Uncle Willie. But the truth is that if we brought Uncle Willie out and we took Uncle Willie to a doctor and got him some help, it's quite possible that he would have lived a more healthy life, and one with a little bit more quality, versus, you know, having to be shunned by people because he had an illness. One of the things I like to bring up about mental illness is that sometimes it's hereditary. Sometimes it's something that your grandmother dealt with, and no one knew that she had anxiety issues, and she had nervous issues, and she couldn't be around crowds, and loud noises frightened her, and different things like that. Those are all things, those are all signs of someone that possibly would be struggling with, or suffering, with a mental illness.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough, you know, thing that you went through. My condolences go out to you and your family. I lost your son there, and one of the things that really stuck out to me is that you had these thoughts right on the highway. You go into it. When did you say to yourself, you know, I'm just not right? When did you identify that something is just not right with me?
I'll be honest with you, it was listening to someone else that had gone through what I had gone through with. And, you know, because again, what I fast forwarded through was we had to go through a trial, and actually had to see the video of my son being murdered and all those things. Again, we talked about trauma. You know, it's easy to bruise someone, and the physical manifestation of the bruise goes away. But the trauma from that bruise stays and can stay a lifetime. And so if you don't have something to help you work through that trauma, if you don't have someone, some coping skills, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a primary care physician to help you work through that trauma, then you'll end up in a very bad place. you asked me, how did I know I needed it? I think essentially is what you were asking. I knew that I needed it because I wasn't acting me. I wasn't acting like myself. I literally was weeping. And don't get me wrong, grief is normal, and there are stages of grief, and those are all healthy things to deal with. I don't put a time limit from one perspective on someone grieving, but if they're grieving longer than what is normal, then they need to seek some help. And I will be honest with you, your primary care physicians, most of them are equipped to help you with some fundamental things, but there are times that you're going to need to really talk to someone that is trained in that field. Primary care physicians are trained, generally. So they touch many different things, but when you need, and I think someone in this position as I was, I needed someone to counsel me. I was blessed in that I had a pastor who had some training in counseling. So I could sit with him and I could pray with him and we could talk about what happened. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that we miss a lot of times as people is that the opportunity to process. Anytime something happens in the business world, and I told you I'm a hospital administrator, anytime something happens in the business world, we have something, a sentinel event, or we have something huge, we process what happened. And I can tell you that we as people, we don't process enough. What do I mean by process? Meaning we don't talk through what actually happened. We don't allow that person time to reflect and time to really discuss how they felt about what happened. I will say this to you. If you have a loved one and they're dealing with some mental health issues, disorders, give them time to talk. Give them time for you to process as well as them what they're dealing with.
Yes.
The best thing that you can do for someone in this situation is to get them some help. And you may not be equipped to do that. That's the first thing we have to realize. I'm not equipped to deal with this. What do? I get someone that can help this person because I love them, because I want to see them safe, because I want to see them get out of the situation. Sometimes this thing is, as I said, chronic. They could have inherited this through a loved one. Mm-hmm. Mental illness is something that you can inherit. What happens then? Then you really have to get them some help. The stigma of it needs to go away.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That's a great point to have, reach out and get help. And sometimes with people who are having suicidal thoughts, they don't reach out for help and they say, you know what, I'm ashamed, or I want to keep this a secret, what I'm really thinking. How can you identify that in someone and say, hey, we need to help this person somehow?
That's a good question. You'll see them isolating themselves. You'll see, I'm not going to I'll try to be as topical as I can. You'll see them isolate themselves. You'll see them, as I said, feeling down, depressed, having thoughts. Sometimes they'll voice them openly, sometimes they won't, but having thoughts of suicide, discussing life. What would it be like without me here? And actually saying those things out loud. Sometimes even their sex drive will be, if it's your wife or your husband, sometimes the sex drive will go away because that's what depression does. Again, suicidal thoughts and that. Problems with alcohol and drugs. Let me just tell you something. People mask so much with drugs and alcohol. They have a mental condition or a disorder and they drink a lot or they use drugs, which help them in their minds cope with what they're dealing with. So if you see someone who is an alcoholic, we would call an alcoholic, you see someone who is possibly hooked out on drugs, you might want to go back and trace what happened to that individual and get them some help. Those are some of the signs in which you're going to see and easily be able to tell that there's something wrong. How do they cope with situations, normal everyday situations? How do they cope with those things? Are they going off to the extreme? Or are they able to handle, and like you or I would, something as simple as the dog peeing in the house? You know what I mean? Yeah. Something simple like that. How are they explosive about it? Or because there's dirty dishes in the sink? You know what I mean?
Right.
Those are really, yes. Okay. What would be normal to you or I in that situation it's off the charts. Those are signs. Again, someone isolating themselves. They're talking about death more frequently than the normal person would. They're focused on morbid things. And also, as I shared with you at one point, are they giving away their items? Are they coming to you and giving something that's special to them? They're giving that, you know what, I want you to have this for no reason. Those are the kind of things you want to look for. Again, are they isolated themselves? That's the key right there. It really is. If you can't get a hold of that person in days and they've gone through something traumatic, get in your car, get over there, contact them, do whatever you need to do to get them out of that situation and into somewhere safe. Call 911. They might get angry with you at first, but in the end, they will thank you. Don't be afraid to call 911, folks. I'll be very honest with you. Law enforcement, at least most large counties, principalities, municipalities, they have trained organizations, departments within their departments that focus solely on mental health. Please utilize those services.
That's great advice. And if you are a person who identifies that and you maybe reach that person, in between, I guess, getting some help, is there anything you could personally say or do to them to just say, hey, let's just calm down a bit?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, yes. They're especially if it's someone that you've built trust with, that they know that you love them. They know who you are in their life and you've been present. There are times that you can talk people down, but there are also times that you're not equipped to do it. You don't know what level, what degree they are in that process. And unfortunately, you go home thinking that you're good, that they're good, and they're not. That's why it's so important to get a professional involved as quickly as possible. Again, they might be angry with you for doing it, but I think you'd rather them be angry with you and know that they're alive than feel that everything's okay and you go home and they're not. I've seen some horrible things in my line of work. People thought that they were helping by giving them money for alcohol. They thought that they were helping by slipping them a $20 so they can go get high, and they weren't helping at all. They overdosed, because they were trying to mask what it was that they were dealing with. I've seen those things, and family members sobbing literally because they thought they were making the right decision and they weren't.
Yeah. So if you see those signs, be proactive and get them some help.
Absolutely. Don't second guess it, because again, you're not trained in the field. You don't really know where they are in the process. You just don't know. And I would rather err on the side of caution and get them that help and ensure that they're okay. Honestly, in Florida, I live in Florida, and they have a Baker Act law that, if you see a loved one in distress, you can call law enforcement and they'll come out and assess that situation. If they deem that person fit to be Baker Acted, that's a 72-hour holding in a psychiatric facility. They'll do that. And it gives 3 days for that professional, that psychiatrist, to evaluate that loved one, to ensure that they are getting the skills or medication that they need to get through that crisis situation. That's a good outcome. That's a good decision to make, because now I'm not prepared. I may not be prepared as your father to help you, but I can get you to someone that can help you. And they're going to talk you through these situations. And sometimes that's all they need, is to just be able to talk through and process. Again, there's that word, process, through the situation to see that it's not as bad as you think it is. And sometimes it gives the provider an opportunity to get that person on some medication for the anxiety, to get them on some medication for a short period of time for that depression, that bout of depression they're having. Because all you need is a moment of clarity to see that life can be better.
Yeah, that's a great point. That, you just need that, hey, that aha moment that
Yes.
everything's gonna be all right. It's,
Yes.
you might be going through a tough time today, and speak about how you are, fast forward to today, how that you didn't make that decision has blessed
Yeah.
you now.
Oh my goodness. I think about what I would have missed.
Yeah.
Grandchildren being born into the world. Um, us launching our ministry, our church. And I promised I wouldn't get too churchy, so I won't do that. But just having the opportunity to speak to people like today about what I had gone through and the steps that I took to get better, and to also show that it doesn't matter what your income is, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what race you are. None of those things matter. When depression hits, it's not discriminatory. It's going to hit whomever it will. And so being able to say, look at me, you know, uh, it can happen to me. It's happened to me. It could happen again, God forbid. But now I have the skills, the tools necessary to get better. I know how to do it. And so if things have been different, where would my wife have been? My grandchildren, my children, are everything that we've been able to build, and help even assist, my granddaughter, my son's daughter. We help raise her. She lives with her mom and everything, but we assist in raising her. So all those things would have been missed. And so I'm so grateful that I had the courage, because that's where we're looking for. I had the courage to reach out and say, hey, I need help. I need something more than what I can provide for myself. And I'll say this to my brothers and sisters in Christ. Don't think that there's something wrong with seeking help other than having hands laid on you or prayer. All those things are great. Those things are necessary. But just as I said earlier, you take medication for heart disease, or you take medication for blood pressure, hypertension, you take medication for diabetes, thyroids. It's the same thing. It's all about your body. It's all about the body. The mind is a part of the body, just like your blood pressure is, just like your diabetes is. It's a part of the body. So just as those those chronic illnesses affect your body, so does mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a great point that it doesn't matter who you are. I
No.
hear at the Alan and Aaron Sports Radio Show, I'm able to interview a lot of athletes that are coming up, some that are making it to the Hall of Fame, and the dynamic doesn't change. If you're successful, sometimes that's even kind of sometimes harder for you to deal with success.
It's a bigger target on your back as
Yes.
well. You talk about success, it's relative. However, for someone in the spotlight, you look at it, and we'll bring this up, and I hope your guests don't get mad at me, but we'll talk about Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Yes.
You look at Will Smith, and everybody thinks, well, he was just defending his wife. No, he wasn't just defending his wife. He was actually defending himself. If you study what he's gone through in his marriage, if you study what he's gone through in life in recent years, you study all those things, all that pressure will build on you, and you will react in some degree. Again, one of the things I didn't mention was violence. That's a sign of a mental disorder. Someone being violent or prone to violence all the time. That there's a problem there, because that's not normal. That's not the norm. You look at how you respond to situations in times of stress. You can't tell me he wasn't stressed out based on what he's dealing with in his life.
Yeah.
So this is how he responded. It wasn't just Chris Rock made a comment about his wife. He's a comedian. That's what comedians do.
Yeah.
Yes, we defend our wives. Absolutely. We defend our wives. I got one that I will defend to the hilt. But it's how we defend,
Yeah.
how we defend our spouse. That's the issue.
Yes, that's absolutely right. How you go about things in
Mhm.
life, and that's our goal and mission, is to save lives here and help people and make sure that they get right. And that's the goal. And if this interview can help somebody, please let us know. If you need additional help, please reach out to us.
Please reach out. I will tell you that, and I wrote it down. There is a hotline that you can call if you are in distress,
Mhm.
If you are feeling depressed, you've gone through something traumatic and you don't know how to cope with it, I know that the Mayo Clinic actually has a lot of resources there online for you, but there's a hotline number, and it's 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. And that actually 1-800-273-8255. If you want to talk to someone, it's a free service. You don't have to pay a dime. You can be anonymous if you wish. But please, I urge you that if you are going through something that is bigger than you, please pick up the phone and call someone to help you. I'm telling you, you are more valuable than you believe. You are more loved than you believe. Life is not as bad as you might think, and there are people waiting to help you. Please take this seriously, because if you don't, you're going to hurt yourself, not just you, but the people that love you as well. And I guarantee you, you don't really want to do that. You really don't. So my hope is that it has helped someone. My hope is that we've been able to identify some of the things that you can look for with your loved ones. If I could leave you with this thought, are we wrapping up at this point?
Yes. Yep.
I'll leave you with this thought. It's just simply this: don't allow what other people think about you to determine you not getting help. Don't worry about what they're thinking. Don't worry about the stigma. Don't worry about what they're going to say on your job. Don't worry about that. Because if the cover was pulled back, the truth of the matter is you'd be surprised who's depressed from one day to the next. You'd be surprised who has issues and who doesn't. So don't worry about the stigma. Go get you some help.
That's right. Well said. And get some help, and definitely reach out. We really want to help you as well. And you're right. Pastor Wilson is 100% right. The pain that you leave with people, they never forget. And
Oh my, that's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
it's that is the purpose of this interview. Alan and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show was started because of an unfortunate suicide that me and Aaron had to deal with, a mutual
Wow.
friend.
Wow.
And that is our goal, is to help people so you won't have to go what I've been through. I've been through it as a child and as an adult, and it's coming out on the other side. It's something that I definitely don't wish on anybody. So please, if you're having those thoughts, you're not alone. Please reach out. Again, that phone number is 1-800-273-8255. And please reach out. Thank you so much, Pastor Wilson.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
For doing this, Alan Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Take care now. Bye-bye.